I think community psychology is very relevant to South Africa. This is really the kind of field of psychology that's needed to make systemic change that really impacts in meaningful ways the society around us. And we have a similar situation in Egypt, where both countries are similar in some of the challenges that we face.
Community psychology for me involves the family unit, involves all the individuals that form part of a society to bring up a community.
Community psychology to me is something that we really do lack. I think specifically in a country like ours, where there are so many cultures that one can learn about and so many different societies within society, I think that it's something we need to expand on and actually try and look into a bit more, because there's a lot that we can learn and there's also a lot that we can help with.
What's made this conference interesting is the kind of international perspectives that it brought. I think in South Africa sometimes, if we're not in the academy, we tend to be quite isolated and insulated. So that's nice to hear what's been going on. I found especially the kind of practice-based sessions quite interesting, perhaps predictably so. For me, I think community psychology needs to be freed from the university structure, from the psychology structure. I think it's grown up now. It needs to go on its own and kind of develop its own way and find its own feet. I do think we have a lot to offer South Africa.
Why I am community psychology? Look, I was studying psychology, and I started to work in the social arena, in the social, let's say, area, and I didn't find any psychology that fit my way of understanding psychology until I discovered community psychology. Why? Because the work we try to develop is go beyond the individual level, or it tries to go. So we need some theoretical frameworks, methods, reflections that sometimes we don't find in the more traditional based psychology. This is what I found in the community psychology. And also I am community psychology, but because I think the only way to be more human is to be connected with the others.
Fairuz. I'm from Indonesia. I graduated my master's studies in community psychology, social change in the US. Because community psychology in South Africa I think it means a lot. Like with the struggle that people in South Africa had, and like the context of community psychology about liberation, empowerment, just all of those values that we have in community psychology really reflects here. For me, community psychology means how much psychology can be accessible to people who actually need it, even if they don't understand what it is.
Community psychology, human sciences were developed in a decoloniality perspective and a critical perspective, and this represents a liberation view that I see in every space here, and I think and I suppose for me the community psychology should be more liberating, more related to the liberation, like in this conference.
I had a very good time at the conference. I thought especially the presence here of a lot of Latin American colleagues and so on really brings something new or something extra, a new dimension to community psychology in South Africa. One of the reasons I came is because I'm interested in the intersection between community psychology and critical psychology. Because I think community psychology has to be a critical psychology. It's always critical of the mainstream of psychology, and it wants to intervene in society in some way. not all forms of critical psychology, of course, are community psychology, and that's okay because some parts of critical psychology are more theoretical and so on. And I think I saw enough, especially around the debates about decolonization and so on. I think there's been a lot of critical psychology. There's a lot of points where people reflected on psychology critically. The one thing that I find lacking, or where I have a critical question, is I sometimes wonder why psychology has to be part of these community projects. So a lot of the best stuff I've heard, I think they're good and they're not psychology necessarily. Psychology doesn't need to be there for them to be good in terms of political interventions or social interventions. So I think it might be necessary to think very critically about why do we have to take psychology into communities as opposed to just support community activism, and what it means for psychology to be taken into communities. Is that a way of sort of colonizing, in fact, community activism and community, or is it a way to decolonize psychology? So for me, that's still an unclear kind of space.